morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all. We're so excited because we're continuing our conversations with the counselor. And today, it's a very important topic, and it has to do with normalizing counseling, support, and therapy for students and families. So we hope that you enjoy the workshop, and I present to you Ms. Indra Owens, who is the guidance counselor here at Chelsea Heights School, and also the curator of the Trust Your Journey project, which is really a fascinating and wonderful project that she's curated and continues to develop. So, Ms. Owens, it's your go.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kidd. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How was everybody's Thanksgiving?
Good morning.
Restful.
Good, good. You know, self-care is the best care, Mr. Steele, so rest is important. I just want to thank everybody for having your cameras on, because it's nice that even when we connect virtually, that we can see each other. That means a lot. And I know that even when our teachers were attempting to educate students and empower students, when we were on a virtual assignment at home, it was very difficult for our teachers to really make those important connections, because a lot of times they struggle with the students putting their cameras on. So I really thank you for, being present in this collaborative space with having your cameras on. So I thank you. And because I can be long-winded, we're going to get started. Okay, so like Ms. Linda Brown Kidd said, we're going to be talking today about how, what a topic is, or what a title of today's topic is, a mind is a terrible thing to waste, but I really wanted to get into normalizing counseling, support, and therapy for students and the families who we serve. And again, with the context of the Trust Your Journey project is to give educators, to give families, to give parents, to give community agencies and coaches and pastors and mentors, to give them the simple strategies to engage, educate, empower, and equip in light of COVID, because I mean, COVID is seemed like it'll be around for a while. And just today's virtually charged climate and beyond. So let's get started. Okay, so I wanted to start today's topic with some of the myths. And I want us to share too, because I want to hear your voices. I mean, I see your faces, your lovely faces, but I also want to hear your voices. When we think about myths as they are connected to mental health support and advocacy and awareness, especially in the demographic we serve, what are some of the myths? Anybody can share. Anybody want to share? Sharing is caring. Okay. Well, so some of the myths about or surrounding mental health support and awareness and advocacy, a lot of times when we talk to our parents, or when I talk to our parents, but I know that we can all share in some of the same experiences. People often think that you have to have some type of mental illness or a mental illness and a diagnosis. Okay. And I put in the urban translation, so I know you're probably going to be laughing a lot this morning, because these are going to all be sayings and different rebuttals that we've heard. So the urban translation for you have to have a mental illness is he or she is crazy, right? And we've heard that before. Another myth is that you cannot confide in professionals with your personal business. Okay, that's not new to any of us. I know that a lot of us have heard that. The urban translation for that is that, they can't know my business, or they're going to tell my business, right? Or, and a lot of times, and I'm glad there's a lot of men in the forum this morning as well. So, a lot of times too, the myth is that men aren't in touch with their emotions, or they rarely benefit from counseling. And, the urban translation to that is, I teach my son to be tough, right? And so even in the case where I work with parents, and especially parents of sons, a lot of times single moms and sons, and when they say that they teach their sons to be tough, but I also say to them, so we don't really want to teach our sons to be tough, but not in touch. And so I think that it's very important for us to start using different language as it relates to mental health awareness and advocacy and support, because we have to get out of the mindset of that folks only go get counseling support, or folks only go get the therapy they need, is when somebody is so-called in our community crazy, right? We want to get all the way away from that to really get our families in tune with getting counseling, getting the therapy that they need, because we all know that we all have some really, whether it's huge and extreme or whether it's very passive or minute, we all have some intrinsic trauma going on, and that really just comes from a lot of the adverse experiences that we've had through life. Do we all agree? Okay. Anybody want to chime in? Any insight? Because I really want the conversations with the counselor to be pretty fluid in a sense. So anybody have anything they want to share before I move on?
Good morning, Indra. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I just wanted to share something that someone shared with me recently. This individual was telling me about their visits with their psychiatrist.
Nice.
And she said to me, I love seeing him because he just gasses me up about everything I'm doing. And I said, I thought that was great, because I think what her doctor was doing was kind of just reminding this person that, you know what, you're just going through what everyone else is doing. You're doing great. Everyone thinks that. I think that there are issues, or it's just them. It's not. Everyone has some kind of mental health things going on, and just wanted to share that.
No, you know what? That's really inspiring, because a lot of times too, what people don't understand when we want them to really get a hold of, like, mental health support in counseling or therapy, they don't really understand is that, it's really not about going to somebody and telling them all your business. It's really more so about going to somebody so they can really help you channel and navigate how you're feeling, right? And so a lot of times, the counselor or the therapist always seems so happy and positive, we're doing a whole lot of psychological reframing, but those are the tools that you try to model. So that person that you're just talking about, that's saying that they, that's how they feel, that's awesome. That's how they're supposed to leave. Because, oftentimes our parents, or even us ourselves in a lot of cases, it's easier for us, especially if we're foreign to counseling or therapy, it's easier for us to connect with people who only trauma bond with us.
And I think about the thing that they say about teaching. You know what? A good teacher always left you feeling good. You might not remember what they said, but you remember how they made you feel. And for this individual to feel so good after a mental health visit with a professional, I know that this person's going to continue with her treatment. So, and that's great.
Yeah, that's more than great. That's exciting.
I have just one little thing. I really like the way you characterize each of the myths, particularly the one with men. I thought that was right on point. So I really like how you characterize them, because we hear those very same things from our students and from our colleagues. If you even mention any of the three myths, those are the responses. So thanks for being on point with that.
Thank you. All right, so moving beyond myths. Okay, so I know that I've often talked about how language is so important, and it really is when we, when we really work with our students and when we work with our families, because, a lot of times the families and the students, they just don't know what they don't know. And so if we're not using the right language, and if we're not really promoting mental health literacy, then we can't really get frustrated with them either when they don't, use the tools, or when, they're using certain language that might not necessarily match the behavior. Because, I mean, how can we hold them accountable for being almost for being almost illiterate when it comes to mental health? And so that's why the literacy is so important. And so mental health literacy really has three major components. It's the recognition, it's the knowledge, and then it's the attitudes. And so a lot of times, even when I'm meeting one-on-one with students about how they're feeling, and I want y'all to really put this to the test, within maybe like the next 2 weeks or so, that a lot of time when I meet with students, when you start to ask them to recognize how they're feeling, they always talk about somebody else first. And it's because a lot of times, and I mean, this might sound really bizarre, but our kids today, a lot of times, no one's asking them how they're feeling. Or even when they are asking them how they're feeling, they're not really expecting them to really be able to articulate it. And which is fair, because a lot of times our kids can't articulate it. But I think that at this point, especially in light of COVID and just the climate today, that we have to be able to expect them to talk a little more past sad and mad and angry. Now, those are the emotions they know, right? How you feeling? Sad. And then it doesn't really go beyond that. But we have to really get to a place where we're having our students really recognize how they're feeling and really being able to articulate how they're feeling. And I mean, one of the strategies, even in the Trust Your Journey project, is to use emojis because that's what they're familiar with. But I also wanted to just point out that the other major components of mental health literacy is knowledge and then attitudes. And I just want to read this to you because the research suggests that enhancing an individual's mental health literacy can aid in the stigma reduction through the improvement of public knowledge of mental health and increasing attitudes towards help-seeking behaviors. And so that's the only thing that we really want to do. And so that's, of course, like the big the wordy version of me in the Trust Your Journey project saying we want to engage, educate, empower, and equip. So if we engage them first, right, we're building trust and relationships, a safe space for students and parents, then we can start to educate them. And that's when the mental health literacy comes in, right? Where I can talk to a mom about, Mom, I don't necessarily think that you should continue to commit to the word depression versus being stressed. And being stressed is normal. See what I'm saying? And not that being depressed is abnormal, but being stressed is a part of mental health, not illness. But when you start going into really claiming and committing to depression, then we're going into a diagnosis. You see? So the literacy really matters. Any questions? All right, so when we go into mental health literacy, again, it includes the ability to recognize specific disorders, knowing how to seek mental health information, knowledge of risk factors and causes, of self-treatments, and of professional help available, and attitudes that promote recognition and appropriate help seeking. So a lot of times too, even when we talk about mental health literacy, really what we're talking about is getting our students and our families sometimes, not sometimes, but in all cases, that we want them to create a lifestyle and recognizing how they're feeling, recognizing their emotions all the time. And it doesn't always have to be a not so good emotion, because I think a lot of times, just as human beings, we focus more on the negative ways we feel, and we don't glamorize when we're in those good spaces. And so we want them to do that as a lifestyle. We want to give them the knowledge and the information that they need and the tools to, like, say if I am not feeling good today, and I've been like in a rut, and I've been feeling a certain kind of way that is almost handicapping me to be happy or to be productive. Now, where do I go to, again, seek help? Because that's another thing. A lot of times, even when they know that they aren't feeling good, then they don't necessarily know where to get help. Okay, so I want to show this because in this pyramid, I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of times what we do is we always want to focus on a mental disorder. And again, that's because a lot of times we're really just misusing the language. And so I want to show this to you. I'm really excited because, it's such a difference in mental disorders and mental health problems and mental distress. And, we rarely know anyone that might not have any distress or like no problems at all. So let's take a look at this.
Have you ever wondered about the difference between mental health, mental distress, or mental illness? The language out there can be confusing and sometimes even conflicting. When we use phrases such as mental health issue, mental wellness, or mental problem, no one really knows what we're talking about. Using the correct language not only helps us to intervene more effectively, but it also reduces stigma. We've got a tool to help everyone get on the same page when it comes to talking about mental health. We like to think of it in terms of a pyramid with these 4 different states. Everyone falls somewhere on the pyramid, with more people on the bottom and less at the top. In the bottom category, we have no distress or no problem. Everything's going fine, and we're generally enjoying ourselves. We may be spending time with friends, attending school, or even sleeping. One level up, we have mental distress. Mental distress refers to the everyday problems that we encounter. These are things that irritate us, things that we're worried about, or problems that come our way. For example, we might have an upcoming presentation to give, or we may have had conflict with a friend or had a flat tire. When this happens,
I want to stop here for a second. Can we share anything related to our personal, not necessarily professional? I mean, we all have some distress when it comes to our professional lives. So let's just deal with some personal stuff. Anybody want to share any mental distress that they experienced maybe over the weekend or during the holidays or maybe even this morning? I want to make a point.
Yeah, I got a problem.
What's the problem, Mr. Mack?
It's okay. I'm not going to share that one. I'm going to hold on to that one.
Okay. Well, I mean, for an example, so I've had some mental distressors. I had an unexpected gas leak at the house. I had to take a day off of work that I wasn't anticipating. Those kind of things, they happen. So was I under some mental distress a few days? Absolutely. Am I going to say, oh God, I was so depressed? No, I'm not going to commit to depression and me being depressed. Actually, the mental distress really pushed me to really take care of a situation that I really probably would have ignored as a homeowner, and it could have become hazardous. So again, okay, as the counselor or a therapist, now I'm reframing and I'm making a not so positive situation more positive than negative. Gas leaks happen.
I had a problem with my heat the day after Thanksgiving. And the gentleman who does that work for me was on his way to vacation. So I had a whole week almost where I had no heat, but thank God the weather was good. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but I just kept thinking if it got worse and very cold, the pipes would burst, et cetera, et cetera. So everything worked out, but that certainly was a stressor for me and my family.
Thank you, Ms. Brown Kid, for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, I will play the rest of the video.
our brain sends us a signal. It's called the stress response. Our stress response is the basis of resilience and adaptation. Once we successfully solve the problem, the stress response usually goes away because we've developed the skills we needed to adapt. We don't want to go out of our way and protect ourselves from these normal stressors of everyday life, because problem solving through these stressors is how we ultimately develop resiliency and the capacity to become successful adults. But oftentimes in life, we're faced with problems in our environment that are simply too big for us to quickly solve or easily our way through. That's what we call a mental health problem, which is the third level up in the pyramid. Mental health problems are serious events such as a parent dying, having a divorce in your family, moving to a new country without sufficient resources. Mental health problems may keep us up at night. They may cause intense emotions and they may last for a long period of time. But remember, they're normal. These are difficult times when it's important to reach out to others for help. Mental health problems may require the support of friends, family, counseling, or just time. The top of the pyramid, reserved for the few.
Oopsie. I wanted to stop there for a second because, a lot of times, especially in our professional lifestyles, and I know especially in titles and what our tasks are, especially as it's connected to Lang City Board of Education, we can honestly say that where on this spectrum are we oftentimes finding our students and our parents?
What was that question again, Andrew?
I was saying that, in our professional lifestyles, especially as we connect with parents through ACBOE, where on this spectrum do we typically find our students and our parents? Do we find them at the very bottom of the pyramid? Do we find them somewhere in the middle? Are we finding them at the top?
Would we be in the middle between mental distress and mental health problem?
Yeah, Miss Josephine, you get a sticker.
I get a star.
Yeah, you get a sticker. Yes, we oftentimes find them right in the middle. Now, again, I mean, a lot of times we can meet some parents too who are extremely irrational, and we're saying like, oh, that person is dealing with some other stuff. But in most cases, we're finding them between mental distress and mental health problems. And the key word that was just used in the video when it came to everything that goes on between mental distress and mental health problems. They used one key word that I think was so amazing. Anybody catch on to what word they used?
Resilient?
I'm sorry.
Was it resilient?
Oh, I love the word resilience, but they talked about resiliency and adaptation. But what they also said in the video was whether it's a gas leak, whether it's a death in the family, or you change locations, you lack resources, all those things, even when you feel kind of down about it, you might have some restless nights, you might have to reach out to a friend or your safe space or whoever your vent buddy is. But again, all the feelings in between mental distress and a mental health problem are still healthy feelings. Still healthy. It's still healthy. And I think that that's the good news. And that's what I really try to share with parents and students as well. So, they can get acclimated to being okay about not having a good day sometimes. But then the resiliency comes in because we talk about building resilient families. This is how you felt today, but what are you going to do to feel better tomorrow? Right? Through the gas leak, through the loss of a parent, through having to, move. How are you going to respond differently the next day? And like they said, once you get to mental health problems, it might last more than a night. And again, that's still healthy. Any questions, any insight? Okay.
Have you ever wondered about the difference between the terms mental
Oh, sorry.
illness at the top?
Oh, wait.
In the bottom category, we have no distress or no problem. Everything's going fine, and we're generally enjoying ourselves. We may be spending time with friends, attending school, or even sleeping. One level up, we have mental distress. Mental distress refers to the everyday problems that we encounter. These are things that irritate us, things that we're worried about, or problems that come our way. For example, we might have an upcoming presentation to give, or we may have had conflict with a friend or had a flat tire. When this happens, our brain sends us a signal. It's called the stress response. Our stress response is the basis of resilience and adaptation. Once we successfully solve the problem, the stress response usually goes away because we've developed the skills we needed to adapt. We don't want to go out of our way and protect ourselves from these normal stressors of everyday life, because problem solving through these stressors is how we ultimately develop resiliency and the capacity to become successful adults. But oftentimes in life, we're faced with problems in our environment that are simply too big for us to quickly solve or deep breathe our way through. That's what we call a mental health problem, which is the third level up in the pyramid. Mental health problems are serious events such as a parent dying, having a divorce in your family, moving to a new country without sufficient resources. Mental health problems may keep us up at night. They may cause intense emotions, and they may last for a long period of time. But remember, they're normal. These are difficult times when it's important to reach out to others for help. Mental health problems may require the support of friends, family, counseling, or just time. The top of the pyramid, reserved for the fewest number of people, is a mental disorder or mental illness. This includes diagnoses such as clinical depression, clinical anxiety, or bipolar disorder. A mental disorder is very different than a mental health problem. This is where we see something going on in the brain, a perturbation of usual brain functioning. This is where evidence-based medical and therapeutic treatment is needed by specially trained professionals. Remember, the pyramid is not a continuum. Mental distress does not necessarily lead to a mental health problem or to a mental illness. In fact, we can even be at each level of the pyramid at the same time. For instance, someone can have ADHD, mental disorder, be grieving the loss of a loved one, mental problem, have an upcoming exam that they're worried about, mental distress, and sometimes they can just forget all about it and feel fine. All of these levels or components of the pyramid are part of our overall mental health. We need to make sure that we don't define good mental health as never having a bad mood. Good mental health includes a wide variety of emotional states. There are times when we are frustrated, indifferent, happy, sad, lazy, joyous. These are all parts of life and normal fluctuations in our mood. If a person has a mental illness, it doesn't mean that they lose their mental health. So let's start using the correct language, because it really does matter. Depression is not the same as feeling sad, and ADHD is not the same as being hyperactive. When we speak from a common framework, we're reducing stigma and building the foundation for better mental health care for everyone. To learn more, check out teenmentalhealth.org.
I actually wanted to share the whole team mentalhealth.org is because it's one of my favorite resources that I use, especially because we work with teens, and not that we only work with teens, but just really understanding a lot of times how our students may be feeling. Again, because I think that as adults we've forgotten to ask our kids how we feel, and I ask Journey how she feels all the time, and not to prompt you know um, feelings of I'm not this, I'm not that, because a lot of times it really just starts a dialogue, and we know that dialogue is the catalyst for change and growth anyway. And so even when I ask her how she's feeling, she's not sad all the time. I'm not prompting her to tell me she's sad. I'm prompting her to connect more with how she's feeling so she can start to articulate the emotions. I want her to be able to say, I'm thrilled that I had VPA today. Oh, are you? Why? I want her to be able to say, I'm a little tired today, right? Why? Because you have all these, I have a test, I have this, I have dance. So then we can start talking about, well, how are you going to multitask? It's always a teachable moment for our kids, but it all should start from us, again, asking them how they're feeling. We got to get them talking about their feelings more. And the real deal is as adults, I don't necessarily know anybody is paying attention to the climate like me, but if we don't think that us really asking our kids how they're feeling matters, they're gonna know all the language, and then like we're gonna be the ones like in the kindergarten classroom. So we have to we're actually already behind, but we have to get more in front of it, because as they're engaging on Snapchat and TikTok and all these different social media platforms, especially because they had just been in a house for 18 months, the kids are all talking about anxiety already. They're all talking about depression already. They're already talking about isolation, and they're talking about all that stuff. So just imagine we got a world of kids that are talking about mental health, um, mental health concerns, and no adults involved in the dialogue. They can't teach each other. They're learning different things from TikTok and Snapchat and all these different platforms and apps they have. I mean, a lot of times they're even learning it through Roblox. They're learning about mental health without our support. That's scary. So we have to know the language as well. And so before I go to the next slide, just as educators, and we're all working with students and we're working with families, I want to ask you, before I even show you the next screen and it comes up, what are some of the student buzzwords? How do we know already as adults that they're already focusing on mental health with or without our support?
Maybe they might say they're upset about something and they might want to talk about it.
Mhm. They're using words like I'm upset. Anybody else? Any specific buzzwords? When the kids come to you, what are they saying?
I'm stressed.
Yes.
I have anxiety.
Yes. Please. They saying they stressed and anxious. Right, Ms. Josephine? They're leading with that. Where are they getting that language from if they're not getting it from us?
Do you think their parents are saying it to them?
No. I think they're learning it from social media. That's my own personal opinion.
And like you said, TikTok specifically.
TikTok specifically. And I'm so passionate about this stuff because I'm using it all at home first. My kid is 11, and when she's bringing up words like anxious and anxiety and all this different language, and and we read, and I have a thriving household. We're not under a rock, but I know certain words that she's not getting from me, and I'm a mental health professional. So I'll say to her like, Johnny, where'd you get that word from? Where'd you learn that from? And Ms. Joseph is absolutely right. She'll say, oh, I saw like a TikTok. So they're learning about it. So if we're not involved in that process, that's scary.
I think they tend to learn a lot from each other too.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Steele, because they're getting it from each other. You're absolutely right, because our kids have a community. And then like unlike how when we were growing up, our kids' community, even though you might seem I talk to some parents that think that their kids are pretty isolated, and because they're in a house, they don't go outside too much. And I'm saying to the same parent, your kid might seem like an introvert at home, but just your same student, your kid is connected to a community where he's most popular. They can be isolated at home, and when they get on Roblox, they're like king gamer. Is that making sense?
You know, I see something. My children are 25 and 27. And, you know, there has been a move with guidance counselors in educating our children about mental health. And as 20 somethings dealing with the pandemic and isolation and, you know, all the things that come around with being a 20-year-old and working from home, I hear that they're kind of self-guiding themselves because they've learned so much. So now they've learned it, and now in their 20s, they're applying it. And so, you know, my kids are like any other 20 something, like they got their stresses, they got their anxiety and stuff. But I really love that, you know, they'll text me and they're using the right words. Like, I'm spiraling, so I'm going to go for a run. My anxiety is getting me. I'm going to get on the treadmill and break the circuit. And these are all things they've learned from guidance professionals. And I think, you know, if I hear it one more time, sometimes come out of their mouths, I just want to snap. But I do think that there's a lot of benefit in all the efforts that guidance professionals and mental health experts and all these different agencies are putting out there, because the 20 somethings have learned it and are now applying it. And I think it's making for a much healthier generation.
Ms. Owens, I have a question.
Okay.
So when our parents, for instance, they may not be aware of how exposed their children are on the different social media platforms, is it a good idea to try to provide them with the buzzwords if they hear them coming from their child, what their next steps could be maybe?
Absolutely. And I think that's probably in the next slide. Let me just, okay. So here's some of the words. Depression, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm sad. You know, we see a lot of our students having an angry outburst. They use words like they're feeling lost. We notice reduced energy in them. A lot of our students are still dealing with grief, panic. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. A lot of them too have a lot of self-doubt. It is so funny. It's either like one end of the spectrum or the other. You know, sometimes you might see excessive sleeping. And I don't know now though, if you notice that versus the excessive sleeping, you see them now wanting to stay up all night, right? They're just like on go all day. And I think that's a whole nother workshop, but I think that has something to do with the overexposure to screen time, because we haven't really explored that and what it really does to us in our psyche because of the blue light, but that's something else. Any other suggestions, any other insight on student buzzwords? All right, we're gonna move on, because now we're gonna move on to Miss Linda Brown, kids.
But wait, I have one. I didn't see the word bullying on here. Would that be something that would cause concern as far as mental health? I would think so, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? I'm actually, and I don't want to like diminish bullying, but I am very apprehensive when parents come in, or even when students they lead with the word bullying. You know, a lot of times, I don't know if you've heard me say it even around here, that, oh, we're not going to lead with the B word, because what I believe, and I do believe that bullying is real, but what I do believe is going on right now is that a lot of us as a community, again, we haven't been in the same setting in almost 2 years. 18 months is a lot of time to be disconnected. And so what we're trying to do now is we're all, from, you know, whether you're 5 years old or 55 or 65 or 85, we're all trying to reacclimate and now still call it community, you know? So, I mean, Chelsea Heights hasn't had 400 people in it. You know, September was the first, you know what I mean? And so now we're really still just trying to coexist in this community, in the school culture again, and that takes time. That takes time, and I don't necessarily think that every isolated incident may be considered bullying, but bullying does absolutely add to, you know, a stressor. It's definitely a distress. All right, so when we think about us as educators, and like now you're saying, like, you know, so we're talking about all this stuff, but how do we still educate parents? How do we get parents on the same page? And I actually had just said this to somebody this morning. So we all know, because we've worked with parents long enough, we can't make parents do anything, right? all we can do is create a safe space and provide them with the tools, right? And so a lot of times what you'll see is you'll see that the same thing or the same lessons and the same tools that we want a specific family to get, we have to give it to the kid. It's just like almost like, if it's a pretzel sale and you put the flyer in the kid's book bag, right? Even if you've done a billion robocalls, class dojo, mom or dad or grandma still don't know about the pretzel sale until they see the what? The flyer that the kid took home. Right? Okay. It's just it has to go through the kids. And that's why, even one of my sayings for the whole Trust Your Journey project is that I serve kids, not egos, because the kids are still very spongy, they're still very impressionable. It's the kids that are going to take the information and they'll put it in the house. Okay. So what are we doing? What are you doing to engage, educate, empower, and equip? So the first thing is that, we have to start asking the kids more, ask students how they feel and challenge them to use their words or emojis. And I've talked about that. Number two, we have to encourage self-care, good nutrition, healthy living, and them doing activities that don't cost a lot or actually are free. And so I might model for the kids, even in school, some of these things. And now I know Ms. Derry and Ms. Linda Brown kid, they'll laugh at me, but I sit in the cafeteria with the kids, and now we see more kids eating school lunch just because they see Ms. Owens eating. Because honestly, your irritability may be connected to the fact that you're trying to be so cute. Why aren't you eating school lunch? Like, I used to love school lunch. Oh, I'm not hungry. But you are hungry. Get a piece of fruit. Drink the juice. Or, it's options back there. I don't know what they have. Oh, okay, well, today is cheesesteak, it's pizza, it's turkey salad, it's a turkey and cheese sandwich, it's peanut butter and jelly. You have tons of options, right? So we have to really model the behavior for them as well. And the language. Ms. Brown Kid can tell you, she was definitely a witness to it, that I had 2 or 3 different students last week come to me for mental health resources. They're saying that they want to get some counseling. They might want to talk to their parents about them, getting some therapy. And I was like, oh wow, like, yay, breakthrough, right? But it's really just because of the language and me modeling certain behavior. Number 4, you have to create a safe space and provide reasonable, honest feedback. So even when the students come into my office, I'm being, again, delicate because they're kids, but I'm being reasonable and I'm being honest. I'm not trauma bonding with them. I'm staying very Black and very white. I'm talking to them about, again, how they feel versus as soon as you ask them how they feel, they want to bring somebody else up. I have them be accountable of just them. I say to them oftentimes, especially when they start to try to bring other people into what their narrative is, you can't tell that person's story. The only story that I want to hear right now is yours. That makes them accountable of owning how they feel. Everybody understand that? Okay. Number 6, educate staff, parents, and students on symptoms and what help looks like for mental health problems. And so I'm pretty sure that everybody, well, especially, my administrator, he knows that I am an advocate for mobile response and perform care. I'd much rather give those resources out, even if nothing is really happening at home. I'd much rather do that than have to PIP a student. And we know what PIP is, the psychiatric intervention program at the hospital. So I'd much rather push counseling services and therapeutic services, the ones that are free in our community, or not a lot of money in our community, versus having the task to PIP a student because they are using, suicidal ideations and they saying that they want to hurt themselves. Number 7, promote social and emotional competency and build resilience. We do that simply here at Chelsea Heights, even by the morning announcements, a positive quote when you see a student. I oftentimes when I see the students in the hallway, a lot of times they think the counselors, we're the creeps of the building. So I notice when a kid has gotten a new shape up, or he has a new book bag, or she's wearing different glasses. Compliments work. When you give compliments, because the real deal is I've never heard of in an ingenuine compliment in my life, right? Sometimes people say, "Oh, that was a fake compliment." What does that mean? You know, in the moment when you said it, if it resonated with the person and it made the person feel good, then it was real. Ms. Josephine, you laughing at me? Number 8, help ensure a positive, safe school environment. Again, that can happen with school announcements, just how you model, just how you walk throughout the building, how you engage with people can really change environment. You would be surprised. It will change environment. You will hear the kids using some of the same language you use. You'll hear other professionals in the building using some of the language you use, and that's okay, because as a community, we should be using the same language when it comes to mental health, right? We're individuals in other ways, in fashion and maybe like religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs, but when it comes to mental health, we should all be speaking the same language. Number 9, teach and reinforce positive behaviors and decision making. We know what that looks like. And then again, encouraging tolerance and kindness. So we have to continue to encourage tolerance and kindness. Any questions? Any insights? Okay, I believe that this is my last slide. Okay, so the caveat. Be expected as professionals and even as parents, as grandparents, because I tell you, I use all this stuff at home. I use it all at home. So be prepared for once you use the language, you'll always be held accountable, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that, because I'm a school counselor and I'm using certain language and I'm trying to model certain behavior that I don't have not so good days, right? I told you I was just under some distress just this week. But you will be held accountable. And being held accountable is pretty good though, because again, as a community, when it comes to mental health, we want to be held accountable. We want to stop trauma bonding with our friends and just being around people that just kind of like tell us what they think they want us to hear. We want people to be honest about, behaviors and language. Also, be prepared to be surprised that your message has resonated. I was so excited, not necessarily surprised, but definitely excited when the few students who came to me within like the last 2 weeks asked for some counseling support outside of here. It just made me feel really good, because you don't understand, like just like how Ms. Josephine is saying that, she's knowing that the tools and the strategies that her children have learned and that they're now applying in their 20s, that's groundbreaking. So our students, again, in their climate, and we have to assume that a lot of our students are being raised in aggressively charged atmospheres. Homes that have some dysfunction, and that kid says that they want to get some mental health support, they can change the whole trajectory of their house. That's amazing. So be prepared to be surprised that your message has resonated, but you know what? As soon as it does resonate, you have to have the resources available, right? So as soon as she had the resources, I already have them printed out and I just handed it to her. Put this one in your book bag. I have some with our secretary in the front office. If I'm up there, I don't want to wait to have to give a parent the contact information for mobile response, perform care, alcohol. I don't want to wait, because in those 2 or 3 minutes, they could change their mind, because, counseling and therapy support is very scary to a lot of us. So you got to have the resources handy and available. And just to be even more convenient for our parents, just have them ready in English and in Spanish. And keep in mind, again, this is the caveat, you're going to start getting a lot of calls or texts or reach out. And so you have to manage that as well. So when we started off by talking about self-care is extremely important as educators, as, mental health advocates or professionals, as coaches, as pastors, as a parent resource center staff and faculty and coordinators. Like, you have to manage that and keep in mind that self-care is the best care. And then, they're all going to be watching. Everybody's going to act like they're not watching, but they're all going to be watching. So you have to make sure that you practice what you preach. And really not even because anybody's watching, but because why wouldn't you want to be as healthy as you want the students and parents to be? That's what you're trying to promote. So why wouldn't you practice what you preach? Everything that I'm sharing with you each time we meet, everything that I share with the students and the parents, I'm using at home. I use it. I use it. And I actually say to parents, and I've said this like within the last few weeks or so, if I wasn't using it, I'd lose it, you know? We're under a lot of stress as well. And so, to keep myself, I gotta be mindful of myself for the sake of others. And so I don't wring a neck. Gotta practice what I preach, right? And that's just being honest because we're all human. And again, so we cannot effectively support others if our resilient tanks are empty. And so again, with us practicing what we preach and combining that with self-care and doing some of the things that we like and we love, that's how we keep our own resilient tanks full so we can effectively support others. And when I talk about others, I'm talking about us serving the kids and the families. And that's it for me. And so here are the additional resources. I mean, again, you can go back to the presentations from the first one that Ms. Linda Brown Kidd coordinated a year or so ago now. I always end each presentation with the resources because I believe in the resources. So you have Mobile Responsible Perform Care and their stabilization services. You have Alcove. Alcove works with grieving children and families, and that's in Jimmy Lee's, that's in Galloway. And I have also my website up there as well. So that's it. Any questions, any concerns? Any yays and nays?
Well,
Oh,
thank you, Ms. Owens.
Andrew, do you have a list of social service agencies that we can use for parents and students? We have one here, but Alcove is not on it, and I was just wondering if the one you have would have more than what we already have.
You know what, Mr. Steele, I found that the only two resources right now that I push, well, actually three, is in Mobile Responsive Perform Care. People don't really realize that Mobile Responsive Perform Care are pretty much the same thing. And
Okay.
Diana is super duper connected to them, so she can kind of give you more clarity on them as how they work on that side. But I feel that when you try to bombard the parents with a lot of different resources, they don't use any of them. And so I'm only really pushing Mobile Responsive Alcove.
Well, really, the one we have, the list that I have here is a list of we have a list of about 8.
Mhm.
And all of them do not deal with mental health issues, but only one on our list that I have here in front of me does. And I was just wondering if you have a list of any others, just so we have them.
I do. I can send that out in an email because I don't think that they do the hard
Okay.
copy anymore. I have an old hard copy because they still kind of send them to me. But
Okay.
anybody is familiar with the source.
We just like to have them on hand for references in case.
Okay.
All right.
I'll send you a link to the source.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Owens?
Or I can actually share the link of the.
We'll send it out by email. Ms.
Yeah, I can
Owens.
send-
I'll send it out after you send it to me, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Okay, you guys, well, thank you so much, Ms. Owens, for again, having a great conversation with us about things that are very pertinent to what we do in the Parent Center and of course, what we do in our daily life. And we look forward to talking with you and having another convo with you next month. Everyone have a beautiful day, please. And we'll send out the recording as soon as it's ready. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Take a phone call from South Carolina.